cold winter's night. Let's see, I'd like to welcome everybody to our hearing forum for the Cornwall Affordable Housing Plan. This follows having a forum in October and another meeting in May. And I think at this point, having a housing plan could not be more timely. There's more articles every week about the housing crisis across the state, across the country, across the world. And I read this week that the cost of housing in 2021 in the United States went up by almost 20%, the highest amount of increase since the numbers were started to be gathered. So again, another article I read about the housing crisis in Europe and Germany, but a lot of these issues are global or national issues, but the solutions and the planning is done here locally. So again, I'd like to thank the committee for their work, pulling a plan together, Janelle for pulling together a lot of thoughts in a coherent piece. Thank everybody for giving us some written comments that the committee is reviewing. And thank you all for attending this meeting. Again, when we had a meeting in October, we had over 50 members, which was a good turnout, a good discussion. And again, thanks for people for sharing this. It is one of the advantages of Zoom is being able to go to these meetings without having to leave your home. But a little bit about tonight, we are having a hearing, which, as the name states, is our chance for our committee to hear people's comments. The committee will meet afterwards, not tonight, but probably later this month, to review the comments, and then eventually they will vote to send the plan on to the Board of Selectmen for the Board of Selectmen's approval. So again, this is the third public forum that we've had on the plan. There have been changes made as results of public comments, previous sessions. And I would like now to turn the microphone over to our planner, Janelle Mullen, to review the plan and some changes that have been taken place since our October meeting.
Great. Thank you, Gordon. I'm going to I want to give a sincere thank you to the members of the committee to start my presentation. Those being Margaret Cooley, Joe Cutler, Heather Deneen, Ingrid Ellen, Will Evans, Marina Kachube, Sana Peterson, Gordon Ridgway, Janet Carlson Saunders, and Anna Tamel. Thank you all for participating. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And this public hearing, to what Gordon's point, it does follow the plan presentation that occurred on October 20th. The steering committee reconvened on October 25th and then finalized the plan with a final vote on that date. The plan has been minimally altered since my last presentation of the draft plan. But in brief, a little less than a year ago, Cornwall received funding from the Department of Housing, and we began the planning process with a 9-month timeline in mind. The outcome of those meetings, which involved discussions, oftentimes data presentations, and public comment, is the Cornwall Affordable Housing Plan. The finalized version is available on the official town website. Its contents are an overview of the planning process, a review of existing affordable housing, a definition of affordable housing and how housing units can qualify as such, existing legislation about affordable housing, especially highlighting 830J, which is the legislation that requires that the town submit this plan to the state, and data review and analysis is the beginning parts of the plan. Just in brief, Data was looked at to indicate trends over time, and it was understood that this data is always changing. Underlying trends and predictions did indicate an aging population. And interestingly enough, despite predictions that said otherwise, the population grew from the year 2010 to 2020. The plan reached the conclusion that despite the various data points, the need for affordable housing remains steadfast in the community. Other elements in the plan included the rising housing costs in the area. In particular, looked very closely at Cornwall's rising housing costs and also housing growth. Housing growth is very slow in the area. According to town permit data, 1 to 2 homes have been built in Cornwall since 1990. The other information that the plan contains is an overview of the zoning regulations currently and their relevance to housing, as well as just a revisitation of the 2020 Plan of Conservation and Development. The housing section was the starting place and the source of many strategies that make up this affordable housing plan. The plan as an advisory document supports the following goals: increase the number of rental units available for residents and workers, increase first-time homebuyer options, consider zoning and permitting changes that enable more housing options, increase the availability and diversity of options for seniors, increase public awareness of Cornwall's existing housing efforts, and further support existing affordable housing and connect citizens to housing resources. The plan as an advisory document is intended to be implemented by various stakeholder groups. Any planning and zoning, legislative change, for an example, such as a regulation amendment, would need to successfully go through the formal process of a zoning change. And then finally, the plan concludes with a number of actionable strategies, which are on the last 2 slides of my presentation. I won't read them to all of you. You all have access to the plan, which will be available and continue to be available online. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you, Janelle.
You're welcome.
And again, we did try to update some of the demographic data from when we first drafted the plan and some of the facts, but as with a lot of things, the numbers are changing. As soon as you write something down, the numbers are different. And one of the things I think we noted recently that the least expensive house for sale in Cornwall right now is listed at $670,000. So that has changed since we started working on this plan. When we started working, there were still houses for $300,000 or $400,000. The market is tight. And again, so we're very aware of the changes. The change is constant, but also we're not hung up necessarily on all the numbers here, knowing that there's going to be change, but there will also be a process put in place that will revisit this subject annually. So again, this is not a 5-year plan. We will be talking again annually about the subject of housing in Cornwall as part of this plan. And again, yes, Janelle.
Yeah, and Gordon, just a thought, if I may, just from the draft plan to now, this finalized product, just to go over a few of the small changes that have made their way into the plan.
Okay.
If you don't mind, I'll be brief. Just an interesting statistic is that 51 individuals have benefited from the parcel program housing. So that stat made its way into the finalized plan. The population numbers that Gordon did mention, so the population from 2010 to 2020 has changed and increased. And those numbers came from the US Census data, the recent data that has just been put out. And then also some elements of sustainability were brought to brought up by community members that spoke during the draft plan presentation. So the committee just moved to put some strategies that support sustainability, such as reducing building footprints, increasing housing density, shared amenities, and other energy efficient and climate resilient measures. That language made its way into the plan. And then as did how the housing coordinator will connect residents with local resources. Some of those resources were named, such as the Cornwall Fuel and Food Fund and the Neighbor to Neighbor Fund. And then finally, the plan supports amending the zoning regulations to allow one accessory dwelling unit per lot by right to adhere with Public Act 2129, new legislation, and to create the possibility for a second accessory dwelling unit by special permit. The plan supports easing maximum square footage requirements, and the measures are a step beyond recent statewide land use reform. That concludes what's changed between the draft plan and this finalized version.
Okay, so thank you, Janelle, for those comments. And now I'd like it to open up to people's comments. Just would like everyone, this is not a debate, so we're not going back and forth and challenging each other's opinions. It's possible to have more than one view on an issue in this town. And we're not here to debate amongst ourselves. And I'd also ask everybody to allow other people to talk before people talk twice. And John will act as a moderator. There is a function on your screens there that you can raise your hand, or you can just manually raise your hand and show it on the screen that you'd like to talk. And again, that's why we're here, is a hearing. So again, be glad to start out. I may have to mute my dog in a minute here. So anyway, who would like to go first?
Maggie?
I just wanted to ask whether what I thought we had decided is in fact true. I thought that in our last group discussion, we had decided that we would recommend to the Planning and Zoning Commission that the of right accessory apartment be within the dwelling, and that any accessory apartment outside the existing dwelling would be by special permit. Is that true?
No, we didn't get into those details. From my recollection, we left those details up to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay.
Okay.
Next person, and the raise hand function is under the reactions button at the bottom of your screen. If you click reactions, there's a bar that says raise hand. It's like that. Then you can lower hand. Or Will Calhoun, did I see your hand up? Oh, you'll have to unmute yourself.
I think Will might have been adjusting his glasses, but Will,
Okay.
if you wish to, it's like an auction. You better not rub your ear, or else you might wind up buying something. So if Will, we'd always glad to hear from Will if he wishes to speak. Otherwise, not.
Jenny Block's hand.
Jamie?
Yeah, hi. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Good. Let's see. I'm not sure where, I find it confusing. Where does affordable housing end and P and Z begin? There seems to be a lot of overlap, as witnessed by that last question that was raised by, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, by Maggie. We've got we've got some strong changes that are being proposed. Some could call them radical. What seems to me most radical is the fact that the plan allows for accessory dwellings as of right without any square footage limits, as opposed to our old. I believe that there were old limitations, and we've now gone out on a total laissez-faire, which means that houses could be built rather than accessory apartments. That's one thing which I find personally disturbing, because it opens up the zoning question. And the other thing is, I'll stop in a second because everybody wants to talk, but essentially it's an important proposal that's being made for 30 houses in 5 years, as opposed to the old 10-year plan of Cornwall, which was for 25 houses in 10 years. So we're going gung-ho, and I don't see what the housing crisis in Germany or the world has to do with us. So in order for us to get our feet firmly on the ground and give us more time, since 830J calls for submission of our plan to the state by July, why are we rushing to get it done in holiday, Christmas and Hanukkah period of 2021? I think that it's giving us short shrift to decide very important things about our community. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, Jamie, thanks for your comments. And I don't mean to speak for the committee. And we won't have detailed answers to, I'm sure there'll be other questions. But I think on the other hand, we don't want to say thank you, thank you. Just to get at your first question a bit about how does this relate to planning and zoning, one of the reasons we are being fairly aggressive about this is because by itself, this plan will not build any houses. This will not change any regulations. This will not cause anything to change. It's an advisory document for the town of Cornwall. And the real work gets done by the town boards that are called to do action on these items. And so things like the limits on accessory apartments, none of that changes because of this plan. These are only recommendations to increase the use of accessory apartments, increase the ease of getting an accessory apartment. But the specifics as far as square footages and other things are clearly the domain of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that will take another whole process of planning, regulation changes, public hearings, and votes by that commission. So this, again, is just a planning document, and I would think that some of those changes are going to take a long time. And so they still may take longer than a year's time on which we meet again. So that's just, I think, really important to put that out there. This is just a plan, and it's not a regulation change. The real authority in the town resides with the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Board of Selectmen, the other town agencies. Doesn't really reside in this plan. Second point is, what does Germany have to do with us, and why are we perhaps rushing? When a lot of these ideas, the foundation of this plan was actually put in the 2020 town plan that took 3 years to craft. And if anything, we've seen the issue of housing, the severity of the lack of rental housing, if anything, get dramatically worse over the last year. In fact, the rental housing market has evaporated in Cornwall. So that's why we feel that these, we want to get the plan out there. So at least give a chance to get some of those ideas, some of those remedies put in place. Because as we said, we've seen the.
Bro, shut the fuck up. Shut the ass.
Yes, no one asked fucking
Hold on.
quads, bitch.
Fuck you. Fuck you.
Okay, so I think
All
we're
right,
getting.
hold on.
Can you please block these people? They're kind
Bro,
of
like
Okay,
I'm
we
only
don't
trying to buy a
respect
house,
your
yo.
nigger
Shut up.
skin. Exactly.
Okay. I've suspended participant activities for the moment while I try to root out the assholes.
Okay. Thank you, Dick.
Okay, so we are, yeah, currently suffering. Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, Jonathan, I can hear you.
Okay, I think we're back. I think I got rid of the bad guys, and if something pops up, I think everybody might be unable to mute themselves. Let's see what happens there.
Jonathan, this is Michelle. We can hear you.
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
Jonathan, thank you for managing that.
Yeah, you've got one left, Jonathan.
Okay.
You've got this Latham West guy.
Bro, no. I'm just trying to buy a house, bro. I'm just actually trying to buy a house.
Okay, they're gone.
Okay.
Got the
Got
wrong
it.
forum.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Jonathan, thank you for managing that.
Good job, Jonathan.
You're welcome. All right. I think Jenny Block had the next, or Gordon, you were still speaking.
Yeah, I think I've sort of forgot what else I was gonna say, but anyway, and again, we feel these are long-standing issues that we'd like to get to work on. And we've had several forums on this, and we pledge to, meet on an ongoing basis with this. So anyway, next speaker, please.
Jenny Block.
Okay, thank you. And unfortunately, all the points on my list were what Gordon just said, but I'm going to say them anyway because I think it is relevant. And I would like to really thank the committee. I think it's an amazing group of people, highly intelligent, and they've really worked hard. And it is a very ambitious plan. I was on the Plan of Conservation and Development for the Housing Subcommittee, and I know that this is a lot more ambitious. And at the same time, things have changed so dramatically in the past several years that I think that we do need to set our sights higher. I think that there's been a lot of opportunity for public comment. I've attended some of the committee meetings. I attended the first public hearing. And I think that this plan, which outlines recommendations, is really helpful. I think addressing the number of rental units is really important. I think that's an area that we really need to focus on. I work with the parcel program, and I can tell you that we have received applications from people who just can't afford to build a house. They can't even afford to live in Cornwall. They have moved to Torrington. So I think this plan is a great start. It's recommendations, and it's a place to start. So I would really urge the board to accept the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ginny. Okay.
Anna Tamel.
I don't know what happened to my video. It's blank on my screen, but everybody can hear me, right?
You can
Yes.
click
Okay.
start video and it should.
All right. I wanted to answer one of the questions that Mr. Longy asked, because other letter writers have asked the same question, and that has to do with why we want to pass this affordable housing plan by January. It's so that we can interdigitate it with the town plan of conservation and development. That was actually a suggestion from one of the letter writers early in this project. The benefit would be that when the town next does an affordable housing plan in 5 years, we can make it for a 4-year period. The next plan after that will then fall due at the exact same time as the town plan of conservation and development. So we can have one housing subcommittee, a lot more efficient. And I think that's the reason for the date, as far as I understand it.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that, Anna.
Rocco.
All right, Rocco Botto here. Having closely followed the progress over the past year, I feel very confident that the new affordable housing plan fulfills the state requirements, is in harmony with our plan of conservation and development, and does a great job outlining the numbers, key methodologies, planning, and strategies in what is quickly becoming one of the most pressing issues facing our town today. With the cost of housing rising and the rental market all but evaporated, I have heard from many people across our town that increasingly acknowledge the lack of affordability in town means that young people can't afford to live in town that they grew up in. Older residents can't afford to downsize from a single family home to an apartment in their community. And people employed in lower paying jobs within the community can't afford to live in the town where they work and are priced out of the market, with the current most affordable dwelling in Cornwall, as Gordon mentioned, listed at over $670,000. We've heard many touching stories throughout this process and in previous forums about how Coogieman Village has served as a lifeline for a family to be able to stay in Cornwall, or how Bonnybrook is giving seniors a safe and comfortable place to be able to stay in our town, or how an accessory apartment has allowed a young person who grew up in town the ability to lay down roots here. The COVID-19 crisis is heightened awareness of the role that homes and housing play as a critical foundation, especially during difficult times, with students learning from home, many people working from home, and everyone seeking refuge as we weather this pandemic. The connection between our homes and our social and economic health is clearer more than ever. This moment of crisis is a real opportunity for us to pause and to reflect on creating an inclusive and an equitable recovery where there is room for all in our town, not just some. In our town, and also too, as the spirit of Cornwall has always been to take care of our own and to serve our neighbors just down the road and across the globe. There are many reasons why there is sometimes initial opposition to proposed plans like this, including the human tendency to resist change, concerns about potential impacts, and implicit and explicit bias around residents of affordable housing. But the truth is that affordable housing is an investment in our community, and it has the profound capacity in making a difference in people's lives, as was aptly articulated in last month's forum. It serves as a catalyst for better jobs, talent retention, health, well-being, and quality of life in Cornwall. It's also clear that with a little imagination, affordable housing can be implemented in the right way in Cornwall, as we have done in the past, and as we look forward. After all, we're a very creative, sensible, and community-minded town. In conclusion, I see quality affordable housing as a key ingredient for a strong and vibrant Cornwall, and I would like to thank this committee for all their amazing work on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocco.
Richard Wolkowitz. You'll have to unmute. There you go.
Unmuted. Well, I like many people before me, I just wanted to thank all the members of the committee for their many hours of work. It's amazing to me that in this small community, we get so many people to volunteer their time to do all these numbers of jobs and to fill all these slots. So my hat is off to anybody who's willing to sit through all these meetings and do all of this work. First of all, the second thing I wanted to say, there was something shocking in this report to me. And what was shocking was that a family of four could earn over $80,000 a year and still qualify for affordable housing. That is a shocking statistic. And it says nothing about us or about our economy, but it says something about the cost of housing, which has now become unapproachable for so many people. So I'm not sure exactly which are the things we have to agree with or not agree with, or which things will be tweaked by planning and zoning in the future. But I think that this is really a stance that is for family values to keep the way it always was, where people of different incomes could live and work in Cornwall. So to me, this is a very conservative proposal, and it's really just a way of keeping things the way they were. When we first came to Cornwall, I mean, our house, I was a young employed architect, and I could afford to buy a house. You know, you can't buy a Toyota for what we paid for our house, and admittedly a long time ago. So I just think that this is, you know, we have to change. We have to acknowledge what's happened to the housing market in order to keep Cornwall the same as it's been. I think we do have some issues with the accessory. I agree with Jamie on one point, which was on the accessory apartments. I think we really have to think about, you know, what we're allowing and not allowing, because someone could just, we don't want someone just building some very high-end, full-scale second house. I doubt people might really do that, but that wouldn't do anything to help make things more affordable. So, you know, as I said, there are many things we could tweak around the edges, but the main thing here is let's keep Cornwall the same. Let's keep it affordable for people to live here and have their children live here. And I think, you know, 20 or 30 units is a very modest proposal. This is a very small number of units And I don't think Cougaman Village or Bonnybrook have changed Cornwall in any deleterious way, and we should just keep plowing ahead. So thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Rick.
Joanne?
I thought David had his hand up first, if you want to go to him.
Okay, is that Dave Colbert, or is that
Dave Colbert.
or is that Tim Prentice using Dave's name? Either whoever it is.
No, it's
oh, it's the Dave Colbert. Go ahead.
well, yeah, I saw that Tim is my alter ego, which is very true, and I'm his as well. So here I'm on the screen, and I think I'm unmuted. So I want to echo everyone who has spoken so far in my approval and gratitude to the hard and skillful work that has occurred. It, of course, it isn't, in my view, perfect, but there isn't anything that is perfect. And in my view, it's an improvement over what exists at the moment. And affordable housing, I feel, is the important issue in Cornwall. So anything that we are able to do to increase its availability, I'm in favor of, or almost anything. And I want to echo, but in the only caveat in that at all is, I guess, what Maggie and Jamie and Rick alluded to. And this is a question, I guess, Gordon or Janelle might be able to answer, is that if Cornwall opts out of the new state law that says that enables accessory apartments by right, if Cornwall opts out of that, does planning and zoning still have the option to say that only accessory apartments that are within a dwelling, an existing dwelling, are considered as right, and those that are a new or expanded footprint are not as right? That's the question, but if you can't answer it at this moment, that's all right. But I think that would be a problem if any accessory apartment of any size would be as right. But thank you for your work.
Thank you, Dave. And again, let's see if Janelle wants to take a stab at that. I think we
Gordon,
left a lot of the details.
I'm more than willing to speak to that.
Yeah.
As far as my knowledge, and don't quote me on this, but after reading Public Act 2129, it is my understanding that the state legislation does not differentiate between the internal to and external of the unit when it's addressing accessory units. So if the town were to opt out by a two-pronged vote, both Board of Selectmen and Planning and Zoning Commission, then if they opt out, they would be able to keep, the regulation around internal by right, external detached by special permit. You did mention something about size as well. The state statute does talk about size, but I hope that I answered your question if you were asking about differentiating between a detached versus an attached accessory unit. I don't know if that was a nod. Okay.
So are we ready for the next
I
comment?
think so.
Joanne?
Thank you. David, you brought up a very interesting idea about the opt-out. Opt-out means that in legislation, there are certain things that the town can, as Janelle pointed out, by vote of P and Z and the Board of Selectmen, decide will not be the rule in the town. And as a matter of principle, I think the idea of opt-out is something that Cornwall should adopt all the time. Opt-out doesn't mean we don't do it. Opt-out means that it's a decision of our town. And as a matter of principle, as a matter of the way our community works and of the outspoken, independent nature of the people who live in Cornwall, I think, as a matter of principle, we should just opt out of everything. Then if we decide to do it, it's a decision of our town and our citizens. And I think that would be a great way to go. And I'd like to urge both the P&Z and the Board of Selectmen to consider it, not because it has anything to do with the specifics, but as a matter of principle and as representing the true heart of Cornwall and its independent nature. Now I'll go back to the issues that I wanted to bring up. The idea that this report will simply be advisory is, I think, a bit misleading, because what happens if you look in other towns is what happens when something is proposed, they'll go back and they say, well, that's what it says in the POCD, or the Plan of Conservation and Development. And that's what it said in your affordable housing plan. And all of a sudden the advisory becomes the rule. So don't be misled by the idea that it's just advisory. It's a very powerful tool and will guide and restrict what can be done going forward. And also when Gordon talked about P&Z having to take a long time to review and public hearings and all of this to put any changes into effect. That seems, it doesn't seem, excuse me, it is in direct conflict with the statement by the present chairman of P&Z, who has said that we need to move rapidly on these issues. We can't get bogged down. We need to move. Speed is of the essence, I think was the specific language used. I think that's scary. I really do. And I have not understood why, if the citizens approved in the Plan of Conservation and Development a plan for 25 units in 10 years, what is the basis for 30 in 5? I still don't, that has not been made clear to me. And I also hope that they were talking about the power of the parcel homes, which I think is a wonderfully unique Cornwall institution. But we should all be reminded that not a single parcel house counts towards the affordable housing count in our town. And going forward, I would suggest that anything that is done by the group, that they make sure that they change the rules, and that if people are going to contribute and support that, that they know that they're building housing that will help us meet the quotas that have been set by the state. And then there's a question of something that has come to my attention that I'll admit I don't know a lot about, but I think we should find out more about, because our P&Z committee has told us that they're going to be driven by data in their actions. And we know, as Gordon said, the data is changing all the time. But there is some interesting data. Heather reports every week about how many people are supported by our food bank. And it's come to my attention that included in that numbers that are reported are deliveries to people in need who may be staying at the motel in Cornwall Bridge. They are not Cornwall residents. They are placed there through a program called CAN, the Consolidated Access Network, which says that if an individual in Connecticut is in need of housing, if they're homeless, to keep them from being homeless, if they say come out of prison and they have no support system in place or anything, and they need a place to stay, CAN is committed to providing that place. If they're released from a mental hospital, if they're perhaps, like we saw in the newspaper the other day, an abused woman who is placed there by a nonprofit. Now, if we're counting those people, I mean, I want to be sure that nobody wants anybody to go hungry. Don't be ridiculous. But I don't want them counted as contributing to the growing poverty that the P&Z committee chair has pointed out to in Cornwall. I would like Heather in the future to break out any numbers of people who are not Cornwall residents who are being serviced by the food bank, so that we have an accurate count of, or a more accurate idea of what the levels of poverty are in our town. Because those of us who live down here notice an increasing number of people walking between the grocery store here and the motel. They don't have cars. There are a lot of single men, middle-aged. Nobody knows them in Cornwall. Is this part of the consolidated access network to place people in that facility? We need to have accurate data so that we put our money and our effort into the right programs to support families and seniors who are in need of housing. I just want us to have the right data so we can make the right and best decisions for our community. And I think that that means not moving to approve this document tonight. There is no rush. The chairman just said, of P&Z just said, we would provide the guidance and support the P&Z needs. They can read the report, they can act on it. If it's advisory, we don't need to pass it tonight. I'd also like to know, actually, how many letters have come into the committee from members of the town. I mean, this is the busiest time of year for most people, socially and family-wise. Why are we ramming this through in this time period when there is no reason? Thank you.
I was just going to say, all the letters that have been received are online.
I just asked for a statement of the total number.
I haven't looked.
What is it, John? 3 or 4 or something like that?
No, it's more than that. It's
Yeah.
6 to 10 or so. I could go online and look. Joanne, you're free to go online and look as well.
Of course, and I appreciate that, Jonathan. I think you've done a great job of keeping us informed. My point was that there aren't a whole lot compared to the number of people, say, who are on this call right now.
Anna.
Okay, so
Well, could I just reassure Joanne that the first letter we received pertaining to the affordable housing plan was from David Colbert on January 25th, 2021, at around the time of our very first meeting. Just thought she should know that.
Okay.
Gordon, would you like to reply to Joanne's contention that there was going to be a vote tonight? It's my understanding that that this is just a hearing, not a.
I'm having a few
I missed
technical difficulties, so I didn't hear all of Joanne. I got.
Joanne was saying.
I'm having trouble
that
hearing you, John.
She was asking. She was insisting that the plan not be approved tonight, and I don't think that that was up, that's not going to occur. It never was.
I misspoke.
On the phone. Yeah, no, we don't.
Okay, any more comments? Will Calhoun?
Try to get it on there.
I couldn't find the hand, but I wanted to unmute. I simply want to thank the concerted effort that's gone into this whole write-up for the town of Cornwall concerning all of the different kinds of housing that is being looked at, that has been looked at for the past many years, and the energy that this brings. I understand that there's concern that things are going to happen.
How did you get onto here? You found you.
I'm sorry?
I think we were hearing some Gordon's.
Okay.
You should be good.
I want to thank the committee, and my sense of this is that this is advisory, that it is a concerted effort to make take a view on how we can solve problems in the town. Having been involved in the affordable housing effort for many years, the energy that comes from this group, the enthusiasm, the urge, the sense of why this is an important thing to be looking at today. I salute it, I support it, and I am with the checks and balances that I'm certain this town is mindful of. I think we will do well for ourselves and our neighbors. So thank you for the effort.
Yeah, I'm gonna butt in and just say it would be really nice if Cornwall had housing options for the people who work here. I know there's people who work at the country market and at the package store and other businesses in town who couldn't afford $680,000 to buy the least expensive thing that's available right now. So as far as data goes, I think that data speaks volumes. You know, I work for the town and am not raking in the dough, and am very lucky to have a place in Cornwall because of an accessory apartment. And you know, it would just be really nice if the people who work here could afford to live here.
I agree.
Maggie?
I wanted to ask whether you had gotten a letter from Bart Jones, because he wrote me separately, but I think he also then wrote you guys, so you have his, okay.
He
good.
did
Well,
this afternoon, we got that. So that one is not online yet, but I will put that up tomorrow.
okay. I wanted to say two things. One is, I don't think this group that has been working since January, I believe every month, and with, this is now our third major going out to the public thing. I don't think you can call that rushing. We moved deliberately, and we've spent plenty of time, and we've listened to a ton of feedback and acted upon it. Okay, that's one point. The second thing that I wanted to say is that I thought at some point, this relates to what Bart is talking about, which is septic infrastructure and things like that. But I thought that in one of our recent meetings, we had spoken about the possibility of putting under the state town cooperation or whatever, some bit about pushing on the state to make the septic requirements less onerous. And I know that from something that Anna sent around, that the legislature is now taking that up under pressure from Desegregate Connecticut. And I just think it would be nice if our town plan also mentioned septic costs as a huge barrier to affordability. I'm done.
Say we lost
Okay.
Gordon for a minute, but he's back.
I'm back, thanks to the younger generation. And anyway, hope I didn't miss too much. But again, interesting times. So who's next?
Janet's hands up.
Yeah, Janet.
Hey, good evening, everybody. So I was a part of this committee. I did stop and read the letters. I have listened to people and what they've been saying about the rushing, and I've been listening to some of the concerns. I don't hear anybody saying that they're not for attainable / affordable housing. I'm not hearing anybody saying that. The main theme that I'm hearing from the people with concerns is the rushing. And when I thought about it, when I sat and thought about it, I agree. A year doesn't feel rushed to me. And having sat through many of those committee meetings that were very thoughtful and very thorough, that doesn't feel like rushing either. I do understand, like, having stepped back and what people are thinking and saying. I'm trying to see both sides of things, because I do believe in affordable housing for people. I also want to be able to balance that with any concerns that might be out there. But the concerns that I'm hearing, I think that there's a reasonable explanation for those. So I do think it's been a very thoughtful, not hurried, well-planned process. It is advisory. So, I can give two examples from my own family. My younger brother moved in with me and my family twice. Once when he was at the Culinary Institute, and again during COVID. He's a chef. There was no chefing during COVID, obviously. So he did move in and created an accessory apartment in my house. I'm not likely going to build him an accessory apartment in my house, but he did have to move to Canaan because he could not, even as a fully employed chef, get a job or get a home here. So I'm hoping that he will be able to do that eventually. But I'm also looking at my parents who are looking to downsize. And I found two opportunities from them. One was $3,200, one was $3,500. My parents are 84 and 85. And, I expect they'll be living for a while longer. And they're also frugal people. So even though they have money saved, I know if I tell my dad it's $3,500 to rent a place, he's going to completely flip out. So two members of my family in the last couple of months have been struggling with this. So, I have been listening to people. I've been listening to this in my own family. I would ask that the group very carefully consider both sides, because I think it's important to listen to that, but also to move forward in a prudent fashion so that we can have people's family members and attract other people. So thank you to the other committee members for what they've done. Jonathan, thanks for helping with all this stuff tonight. Janelle, you've been doing an amazing job. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you've done. Much appreciated. And that's me.
Okay, next hand is Caroline. I think you're muted, sorry.
Oh, thanks, sorry. Hi, it's Carolyn Nastro. Yeah, and to echo a lot of what everyone has said, I believe that we strongly need affordable housing in Cornwall. And I think to say that we need affordable housing doesn't necessarily mean that we need this plan. And I think it's really important to kind of distinguish between that. Not that we need this plan, but that we don't need to approve the specifics of this plan just because we need affordable housing. They're two very separate issues. You can do affordable housing in lots of different ways and still have a real push to do affordable housing in the town. So some of the issues that are of concern are what people, to me, are what people have already mentioned. One of them is the unlimited square footage for accessory apartments. I don't know how many of you have lived in affordable housing, but 6,000 square feet accessory apartments are not affordable. And also, they're not deed restricted in this plan. So accessory apartments, it would be interesting to try to have some accessory apartments deed restricted in some way, as Margaret Parnell pointed out in her letter, so that we can keep them affordable rather than them becoming. Margaret Parnell also pointed out how I think there's been a problem with accessory apartments becoming Airbnb kind of empires. So they're not affordable at all. They're renting for lots of money and people own them and use them as affordable Airbnb apartments. So that's a concern for me. The other concern is the issue of private developers building projects in Cornwall and what that means. I'm not opposed to that necessarily. I don't know enough about what the plan is proposing to really be opposed or not, but I think it would be useful to hear what that will be about in Cornwall. The other thing is I'd like to address this issue of the advisory. I think it's really disingenuous and almost deceitful to tell people that it's only advisory. Yes, literally, it's written as advisory, but as we all know, the Plan of Conservation and Development is advisory as well. And the P&Z Commission constantly refers to that as the reasons for why they are doing things. And in fact, the P&Z, if I'm not mistaken, already endorsed this plan. So to say that this is advisory, so because of that, we can kind of just put together something, quote, messy, that doesn't really address the issues in Cornwall is not accurate. It has to be correct for what we want to do here. So if people in Cornwall don't want to have an unlimited square footage accessory apartment, I mean, where basically you're kind of opening up the potential to double the housing density in Cornwall. If people don't want that in Cornwall, then that shouldn't be in the plan. We shouldn't just put it in as kind of, this is a recommendation and we don't have to listen to it or not. So that's something that is of concern. The other thing is about the public being involved and how long it's taken, and about the rush, the comment that this has been rushed. Well, it's true that the committee has done a great deal of work, and I've watched a lot of those conversations and they've been really interesting. Don't come in here. And they've been really thoughtful, but the public has not really been involved in those discussions. First of all, the meetings happened at 4 p.m. on Mondays, which is difficult for a lot of people to attend. Secondly, the drafts were not made available to the public, even though they were requested. So it's hard for the public to be involved in a discussion on an equal level when you can't have access to the drafts of the plan that is being discussed. The third thing is the public comments were at the end, and at the end of meetings, people don't really want to hear much anymore. I mean, they listen. I'm not criticizing the committee, they were great, but I just mean that it's kind of the end and the things have been discussed and they're not usually followed through the next time. In fact, they were never. So like, for example, I remember I asked Heather about what she saw as one of the major issues in town related to affordable housing. And she said credit rating, that it's really important for people to improve their credit rating because they can't even get on the wait list for places like Cougaman if their credit rating is bad. So it's kind of a catch-22. And that was never addressed in the plan, even though that was brought up as an important issue. So it is rushed in terms of the fact that the public really hasn't had an opportunity to weigh in on a lot of these issues in an equal way. And we can see that even by the fact that the plan has just changed. I mean, it was submitted and people have commented thoughtfully and written letters in it. And then now there are some really major changes in it that were just discussed this evening, one of which even Maggie Cooley was unclear on, which I thought was a great idea of Maggie's, that about the opting out of the as of right for the accessory apartments, that you could have as of right perhaps in the house and then not as of right when you had an exterior dwelling, that it would be special permit, which is really, to me, completely needed, because how can you have unlimited square footage and have that be as of right? I mean, from how I understand as of right, that means that you don't even need a zoning permit. Basically, people can build those if it's within the buildable area of the lot or something. So that's another point. And I just had one more. Yeah, so it not being advisory, the public, and then, oh yeah, the last thing that was not added to the plan, even though it was mentioned by the public. In fact, I don't know many things that were made in the plan that were mentioned by the public. I don't think even one during the meetings that I attended. But one of them was the moratorium, which is basically this 10% requirement that we need to have 10% affordable housing, which is equivalent to 100 units in Cornwall, to avoid being sued by a private developer, which may become an issue now that we're allowing private developers in town. We can actually file for a moratorium on that if we can show that we're making progress towards affordable housing. And yet that hasn't been discussed in the plan at all. So I really think that we also just learned recently that the reason we're passing this in December was to kind of align with the POCD, but that wasn't the reason that was given in the beginning. The reason that was given in the beginning had something to do with compensation or grants and trying to make sure we got it in by that time period. So we really do have time to involve the public and get this in by July 2022. And if you really do believe that affordable housing is important in Cornwall and you want it to happen, then you have to include the public. If you don't, it basically means that you don't think this is a cause worth pursuing. Because the only way that this thing will work and is if you push things through and just try to do it without involving the public. It's just not the right way to go. It's not going to make affordable housing a popular issue. And I think that is a real problem because I don't think the people who need affordable housing need to be almost vilified in that way. I think that it shouldn't be a question, it shouldn't be a contentious issue in any way. And so if you don't involve the public, you're essentially making it a contentious issue. A lot of people have spoken here about issues that pertain to Cornwall, and they need to be heard. And the plan needs to be adjusted to take into account these positions, because otherwise what you're essentially saying is that affordable housing isn't worth the discussion and that it's okay for this process to be tainted in that way. And I really believe personally in affordable housing. And I think that I really hope that the committee treats it as strongly and respects it as strongly as I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. And I could say quite a bit, but I would like to say this, that this committee take public participation very seriously. I think we're probably the only town that's had 3 forums on the issue. All the committee reads all the comments that we get written. And I think everybody's here listening to all this tonight. We're getting a great turnout again. And again, as part of our plan, which other towns probably don't have, its state mandate says we only have to do this every 5 years. We're going to commit to talking about this in a public setting every year. So again, I think we do value public participation. This has been an issue for Cornwall for a long time. A lot of public participation has gotten us to where we are. Talking to some of my colleagues in other towns, they wish they had done as much as Cornwall has done in this area. And continues to do. So anyway, Ingrid, haven't heard from Ingrid yet.
Yeah, you know, Michelle had her hand up first, actually.
Oh, Michelle.
Michelle and Anna, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hi, Ingrid. Everyone. I really want to thank the committee for all their hard work. And I don't know how people feel like this has been rushed and that public comment hasn't been made available. Every single meeting is recorded. Every single meeting is available to watch. And public comment can always be emailed in. I've emailed a couple of times. No, it hasn't been incorporated in, but I think the whole point of this plan is that things are being taken in and that this commission is not taking action, but really putting something out for our bodies that are elected officials to take the action. I feel like we as a town citizen body need to take more responsibility for our own information. Join CCN, join Facebook. Richard Griggs sends meeting notifications out all the time afterwards so that you can watch YouTube. There's no way anyone in this town should be uninformed by what's going on. I understand you might feel rushed because you're just joining on, but that is not this committee's fault. I have watched every single meeting. They do meet every month. Anyone I miss, I go to YouTube, and that goes for every meeting in town. EDC, it's all out there for us to watch. So if you feel like you're rushed and behind, then as a former kindergarten teacher, I need to tell you, you have homework to do and you need to get on board and pay attention so that we can continue moving forward. I'm ready for this committee to make some hearings and send it on so that we can in fact get affordable housing. I have a nephew and a dear friend who would love to live in our town, but there's nowhere for them to be. My nephew would love to volunteer in the fire department. Where is he gonna live? We can't wait another year of regulatory talking when all this is gonna go to public hearing. When P&Z puts forth an ADU regulation, you're all gonna have a voice then. So why do we need to spend the voice right now? Let's move this plan along. Let's let the P&Z and all the other commissions do their job and have your voice then. Take this as a learning moment. Pay attention, watch the videos, send in your emails. And actually, if you send in an email, you have a better chance of getting a response at the meeting. So thank you for listening. I'm sorry that was preachy, but as someone who's been on board for a year, I feel like we as adults need to take responsibility and be informed. Thank you, committee, for all that you do for us.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, Anna or Ingrid? I think Anna might have had her hand up first.
I wanted to correct a couple of errors of fact that were brought up by Caroline pertaining to P&Z, but I would like to hear what Ingrid says. So
Okay.
I'll wait.
Come back.
Okay, so I'm going to try Caroline and others. Thank you. Thanks to everyone for your comments. We really do listen. We really do. We read all the comments. We listen. We care. We have actually, and off the top of my head now, I'm not gonna come up with all the examples, but actually some things in the plan actually came from suggestions at public meetings. I think that the housing coordinator, which actually is somebody, I think part of our vision, Caroline, is that person would help with things like credit repair. And so that's one of the things we're very excited about that. I think the revolving loan fund came up from a suggestion from a meeting. So, we have listened over, this last 12 months and at our meetings, at our monthly meetings, and also the 3 public hearings, we've listened to ideas. We've incorporated what we thought, as a committee, our consensus was were good ideas, and we believe they belonged in the plan. And I will also want to clarify just that on the ADU question, and I understand that's people are going to disagree about that, but we're not recommending that ADUs of 6,000 square feet, that there be no size limit. Well, we're sort of silent on that. We were recommending that the P&Z consider raising the current cap. We aren't recommending that there be no cap on the size. So that's something I want to clarify. I think, I think I think the final thing I wanted to say is just, why we bumped up the number. And I have to say, maybe I'm, guilty of that. I think I wanted to be more aggressive, partially because, the needs have really changed and they've really accelerated. It's not just Germany, right? It's also Cornwall and it's also this region. And there is I think as everybody has spoken so powerfully on this call and in all the meetings that we've had, there is just a pressing need for affordable housing in Cornwall. And it's gotten more pressing since the POCD plan was drafted. And so we wanted to step up that goal.
Okay, thank you, Ingrid. Those are excellent points. And I do think that actually the idea of having more than one accessory apartment per lot was a suggestion from the public.
Yeah, I think that was as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And again, a good clarification. I don't think anybody felt that the Planning and Zoning Commission is going to have an unlimited square footage accessory apartments But again, we didn't want to put our thumbprint on that. That's something they're gonna have to wrestle with. But we know, again, that's my feeling too, that we wanted to raise the limit, but we didn't want to say short circuit that process by saying what a number was. And on the rushing thing, one thing that comes to mind in my office, I do get people asking, do you know a place I could rent in Cornwall? Do you know of houses to buy? And, or, you know, people that are renting here that have to leave. And certainly those people that have to leave don't feel we're rushing this issue. And there's probably one family or so a month, at least, that I know of, that come to my office saying we don't want to leave. Those people don't feel we're rushing. It's just, again, there's limits to how much we can do, but there's also no doubt in my mind that we need to keep the progress going. Thank you. Jonathan, who's next?
Martine or Anna Tamil, are you ready?
Yeah,
Oh, you're muted. Sorry. There you go.
I just wanted to make sure that everybody present understands two things about the Planning and Zoning Commission. The first was Caroline's statement that we have already endorsed the plan. The commission does not have the right or the authority to quote unquote endorse this plan. That's the role of the Board of Selectmen. The P&Z's role is to make a statement, an evaluation about whether or not the plan is in keeping with what we have already worked so hard to put into our town plan of conservation and development. So when we had a vote, we used some arcane kind of legal language that this affordable housing plan is not inconsistent with the POCD. That was our role. When it comes to the POCD, our role is very much tied to that town plan. That town plan was developed over a long period of time with a lot of public input. It was an expression of the public will. And when the Planning and Zoning Commission amends town zoning regulations, the obligation that we are under as set forth in statute 8-2, our enabling statute, is that the changes that we make in the zoning amendments have to have something to do with the town plan of conservation and development. We just can't make up regulations willy-nilly that reflect our will as individuals on this commission. The decisions that we make have to reflect the will of the town. And so the plan of conservation and development is in fact a kind of sacred document. And it should not be belittled or minimized. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Martine Longy. You're muted, sorry.
Is it better like this?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, about the advisory committee, it would be nice, unless I'm missing something, that we have the name of these very important people who are determining the future of Cornwall made public. And I didn't see it on the cornwall.org website. So I think it would be good that we know who is who and who does what. Then we hear constantly that no one can afford to live in Cornwall. That's what Anna had said 6 months ago, at the very moment when Cornwall enjoyed an amazing new flux of population with a real estate renaissance. Now, this new population are New Yorkers. This has nothing to do with local people, but they pay hefty taxes and they come here because they love the context. it is integrally compatible with real life in Cornwall, real people in Cornwall. As you mentioned, Jonathan, people who work here should be able to live here. That's very important. And first of all, is that for certain that people who are from Cornwall will have a priority to live in those units. The other thing about context is that Cornwall is very rural. I know it's a dirty word, but it's rural, it's beautiful, it's quiet. Can it remain that way while satisfying the needs for affordable housing? The committee has been working for over a year, once a month. The third public forum, no, it is not a lot. So yes, it can be said that decisions are being somehow precipitated, and that about people who are getting older and want to downsize and stay in Cornwall. I just want to remind again that there is no mass transportation in Cornwall at all, no mass transit, no amenities. And usually, unless people who want to downsize later in life have children in the town, they tend to need to go in more urban areas. And young people, I'm sorry to say, young people usually, they like to go where the vibe is, and the vibe is more in town because the hormones are in town, everything happens in towns, not in the country. They are not in love and not chasing after the trees. So we have to be very careful what we are talking about. We must not forget that this is not and will never be and should not be an urban environment unless you guys want to make it a suburban environment, which is a very different proposition. And again, no one contests the need for affordable housing. It is all in the execution. The execution should be sensible with the needs of the people who need to be protected, the needs of the people who have elected Cornwall and pay hefty taxes to live here and don't want to see the rules changed drastically while they took so much responsibility to settle here, all of us, I suppose, and the execution has showed us in the last several months that, I can cut short and ask the question, what are you guys going to do with this public forum? Are you going to integrate, or are you doing this because it's a nice thing to do? Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
I'm going to share my screen for a moment. This is from the website under housing plan documents. This is under the government drop-down, minutes and agendas. Cornwall Housing Group roster.
Okay, is it under government, Jonathan?
Yeah, you go to the government drop-down and select minutes and agendas.
Okay.
And then Cornwall Affordable Housing Plan Committee, and then.
Thank you.
But it's been up there for, hold on, I can find out how long has it been up there. Since March 23rd.
Yeah.
Okay, but I just wanted to show you. So because you wanted to know. There.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Oh, I see. It looks like Ella Clark is there. Ella, I think you're muted again, as we all say to our friends. You're muted.
Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I want to extol the incredible efforts of this committee, who have kept us apprised right along with what they've been doing. And also to extol the originators of affordable housing, such as people behind and including Ken Keskinen with the Cornwall Housing Group. I have a question which has to do with something David Colbert mentioned in one of the things we saw online here, which had to do with the possibility of two-family housing. What do you think that's going to be available, if ever?
Oh, I think, yeah, I think that will be one of the things eventually the planning and zoning wrestles with. I mean, in theory, that if you have a accessory apartment in your house, you could have a two-family house with an accessory, with one family accessory and one in the main part of the house now. So I think we probably do out there somewhere have some two-family houses. I know there are some multifamily houses in West Cornwall and some of the other metro areas of town. And I think that is one thing, but again, I think that's it's in the housing section of the plan of conservation development is to look at multifamily housing. But I think that the sequence of events will be up to the Planning and Zoning Commission to do that, but it's definitely on their task list because of the POCD.
Thank you.
Richard Walkowitz, do you have another comment?
No, I had a comment and a question. I also wanted to thank everybody for all their hard work, and I don't feel like this is being rushed. But I'm a little unclear about the accessory housing part, and people are saying all kinds of things around the edges. And I guess,
Yeah.
I guess the accessory housing piece, I think would obviously be that someone wants their relative older or younger, or they want to rent something in an accessory apartment. But I don't see people clamoring to build another huge house on their same 5-acre lot. And I just don't think this is happening because of what people want, because of septic. Someone who wants to have a big house doesn't want to have it on the same lot as another big house. So I think that all this worry about the accessory housing is really kind of bogging us down. I think that accessory housing is a wonderful way to create more affordable housing, besides building some other rental units in smaller clusters or whatever seems to work in town. All these things would be, very considered and go through all the planning and zoning and all these things. Nothing is being rushed. Nothing is going to be crammed down the throats of Cornwall residents. So I think that there's a lot of discussion that's sounding a little hysterical that doesn't need to be. That's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy, Barry, were you waving your hand? You're muted. No, you're good.
Yeah, I did. I thought that we were being bombed again.
We were. I got rid of them
Okay,
real
and I
quick.
was trying to get your attention. But
Yeah.
I also
you.
want to thank the committee. As well, I think that we're having to play catch up. We've done a lot more than many towns have done with housing diversity for people of all backgrounds here in Cornwall. I just have one question or one thought left, and that is our land. It looks like we have a lot of land here in Cornwall, but it isn't all buildable. And so when we come across land that is buildable, we need to ask ourselves, what is the best use for this land? And here is what, going back to Ella's statement, with allowing a 2-family or 4-family type of either a cluster or something, I think that we can look at this, but we need to ask ourselves, how can we best use a piece of land? Is it for one house or is it for several? And that's all I have to say, but thank you all again.
Thank you, Nancy.
Okay, Jamie, did you have a follow-up?
I did, yes.
Hold on. You might have, you're getting two pickups. Does someone have a computer near you that is?
Yeah, and I think
They need to turn their volume down.
it's been turned down.
Okay, thanks.
I'm good now?
Yep,
Yeah.
you're good.
Okay, so first, I want to thank you, Jonathan, for grace under fire, and actually the whole group. I think that if I'm reminded of Senor Wences. I don't know if many of you remember him, but he would say to his little hand puppet, he was a great ventriloquist, and he would say, "Don't worry, it's easy." And Johnny, his hand puppet, would say, "Easy for you, difficult for me." And this question of whether we're rushed or not, I think depends on our perspective. I myself have found things being rushed simply in that I haven't understood, I haven't got answers, or I haven't sometimes been able to pose a question at meetings, essentially about this, which is, of course, we're all for affordable housing. We want more of our people, of people who are an integral part of Cornwall and who have less means, or younger, older, to stay here. How do we guarantee that the affordable housing and what's the other word for it? That the anyway, attainable housing, yeah, is primarily for our local people. I remember being a bit shocked when I heard that we were going to invite in private developers and in fact subsidize them. I believe that Chairman Timmel mentioned there would be some kind of subsidy, perhaps tax subsidies. Are there federal funds that would be used? And what do federal funds say about our limiting or trying to limit, to triage that the housing be for local people, so that either people who are local or who intend to or who have roots, whether they're not necessarily the youth or old people looking to downgrade, but nurses, teachers, people who can't afford $600,000. And I just wanted to reinforce that the idea of having, of opting out on this question of detached or attached housing has been made by several people whom I respect, and I'd like it to be considered seriously. And that's really all, essentially all I have to say. Thank you for letting me speak.
You're welcome, Janie. I think many years ago, before I was on the Board of Selectmen, I was also on the Cornwall Housing Corporation, and these issues about favoring people that grew up here at family ties to projects came up, and how can you do that? And the long and the short of it is, if projects use federal or state money, you can't say you have to have a Cornwall zip code in order to be part of that. So, but what I can guarantee you is, John, I think we're getting bombed again. What I can guarantee you is the people that live, when they come to Cornwall, they will become Cornwall people. And many times what we find is the people that that live in affordable projects have ties to the community, and certainly they do more than their share to get involved as soon as they come here. So I'm not hung up on that point. And I think also there is state regulations as far as what you can do. So I hope that helps. Oops, it's a dog.
I have a question. So if I paint my house black, will I be considered an emo?
Will I be considered what?
An emo.
What's an emo?
I think that person left. I won't let them back in. I see Maggie, you've got your hand up, and Richard Bramley has had his hand up for a while.
Okay, so if I'm next, I'll be glad to go.
Yep, you're next, and then we'll go to Maggie, if that works.
So I've had the opportunity to have an accessory apartment, accessory space that's been rented for over 30 years. This is something that was early on in the regulations that was allowed. And over those years, I'm unaware of any complaints, concerns, or issues from surrounding neighbors or people from afar. The place is always rented. I could probably rent it twice. There are people willing to move in before people move out. I've been fortunate to have a second space that's under a different regulation that's rented. Neither of these are official affordable housing because they don't meet the official affordable housing regulations, but both of them have housed people that have grown up and have families in town, have worked in town, have been teachers in town, have been contractors in town, have been a number of things. The need, this is only a perspective this is a 2-point perspective. This is not an official survey of any sort. It's my personal survey that says that there's an incredible demand for it. I'm asked, I won't say weekly, but certainly monthly, are either of these spaces available? So I'm asked all the time. People are certainly looking for space. But the second thing is that these are spaces for, they're not official, as I said, they're not officially spaces that would constitute affordable housing, but they are spaces that seem to always house individuals that are from the area or that are working in the area or that have moved to the area because they're working in the area. And there just is an incredible need for that based on my own personal interaction with the spaces that I have and the people that are looking for the spaces. So the ability to increase those kinds of spaces certainly is needed. And I would suggest, and apparently you're already on the motion, the moving forward on creating or attempting to create those kinds of spaces, which is certainly in the correct direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. So, any other comments?
Maggie.
Maggie.
Okay, I didn't want to make this go on until breakfast time, but I just wanted to mention for Jamie that fair housing legislation prevents anybody who advertises something for sale or rent to inquire too much about the person who wants to buy or rent it. It's not just something that takes public funds, it's anybody. Fair housing is across the board. And even if the people we are housing may come from Falls Village or Warren or Goshen, think of all the people in our towns who have been housed by all the surrounding towns when they can't find something here. And furthermore, nobody is particularly checking up on people who are coming in and buying market rate houses and tearing down a modest thing, building something twice as big, and then moving on in a year when any shadow of affordability is gone. And then my last point is there are plenty of young people who are dying to stay in Cornwall, that they don't need bright lights, big city. They can get that in other ways, and this is where they want to live. And it's really sad that we have more. Thanks, that's all.
Yeah, I think it's just important, again, as we've studied this for quite a bit, the facts just keep on coming forward. And one of the facts is Connecticut is second in the country behind New Jersey in having the highest percentage of 20 or 30-year-olds living with their parents. And Litchfield County leads our state in that figure. So clearly there are plenty of people that are young people in that demographic that would like to be here. And it's an outlier as far as numbers go, of people trying to be here, trying to get a foothold, even means being down in the basement or wherever for a while. The need's real in a bunch of different ways. So anyway, thank you. So we'll begin to wrap this up. I see Caroline has her hand up. So
Go
yeah,
ahead,
Caroline.
Yeah, I just wanted to say in response to Richard that it is great what's happening in Cornwall with the accessory apartments. And from what I've learned, I mean, I've come here recently, but what I've learned about all the work that the parcel program has done, and Cornwall has a really good, actually a very high rate of affordable housing in comparison to a lot of towns due to the generosity of people who live here. And when you count the parcel programs, which are in essence affordable, but just maybe not considered that by the state, we have even more. So it's really great, the work that's been done. I think there needs to be a point of clarification that maybe isn't being made so clear. So the state mandates on this new state requirements, there's 1,000 square foot limitation on accessory dwellings. Cornwall already has a 1,200 square foot limit, and maybe that could be bigger, but the plan doesn't just mandate, let's keep it open, as it was said before. The plan actually, to quote, says eliminating a maximum square footage cap. It's not advising the P&Z to consider increasing it. It's actually advising the P&Z to eliminate it. So that's a very different and very strong language. The other thing, in terms of them not it being advisory, in the document itself, it says that we recommend that the plan consider amending the zoning regulations, page 18. They're actually recommending to the P&Z to consider amending the regulations. So these are very strong statements in this P&Z, and I just would just like to conclude by saying that there are many ways to do affordable housing, and there are many ways to incorporate public feedback to make this happen. And it doesn't have to look exactly like the plan, this draft plan has proposed today. I think the more people we get involved, the better. Thank you.
Thank you. Last chance, who wants to have the last word? I would just like to say how glad I am to be part of this process, and how well, even though not everybody agrees on everything, this issue, as many issues nowadays, can divide communities. But this has been a very, again, a very good discussion, a bunch of different points of view. Again, thank you for all being able to have that kind of good, honest community discussion on a very important issue. So, does anybody have something else? Joanne?
Just one final thing. Thank you very much. I'd like to point the committee. You know, the point was made by the kindergarten teacher about us who may be raising some issues, indicating that we had not been involved over the last year. I've attended an awful lot of meetings, and I don't consider turning on the YouTube and listening to people talk at me and writing and asking questions and not getting answers as participatory as I might have liked. And I would just commend anyone who's still on this call to find the multi-page input that a woman by the name of Marguerite Purnell submitted to this committee, and look at all of the multiple points she made. And I wonder whether, you know, the point was made that there was plenty of input. But as Janelle started this meeting, she pointed out the plan has been minimally altered. And I think that is the point. There is input, there are good ideas. And I just commend you to read her input because it's extremely thorough, interesting, and based on a lot of experience in other towns. It makes her a good read. Now, I would point out that the goal of the group Desegregate Connecticut, which since we have in Connecticut been designated as the most segregated state in the union, is a very good goal. But the goal that they have announced is to end local control of zoning. I don't think that's a good idea. You should know that whatever they're doing is with that goal in mind, ending local control of zoning. And we should keep that in mind when we look at what they propose. And I also would urge our Board of Selectmen to write to our state legislators and pressure them to change the rules for counting affordable housing units. Because as Richard Bromley pointed out, he has affordable and he offers affordable housing units in the real meaning of the word for people who need that kind of housing. But we can't count it because he's unwilling, as any responsible homeowner, property owner would be, unless they're just have oodles of money, I guess. They're not willing to put a lien on their own property that would make it designated as affordable. So I think if our legislators, our Board of Selectmen would start pressuring state officials to change that law, it would be really good and we could have a more accurate count of affordable housing in our community, which none of us, I haven't heard a single person who's opposed to the idea. It's not what we're doing, it's how we're doing it. Thank you.
I think that's in the plan, is it not?
To do what?
Hold on. The Janelle.
To lobby the
Yeah,
state to
and
count
then-
accessory units towards affordable
Je vais
housing.
dire à Jonathan qu'il y a les 60.
Martine, I'm trying to mute you because you're not making a comment right now.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, Janelle, go ahead.
Okay.
Were you able to hear me?
Yes. Can you just repeat it one time, Janelle? And I think that'll be the last word.
Sure, yeah. So that suggestion to lobby the state to count accessory apartments towards the overall unit count as a suggestion in the plan that's written in there.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And again, thank you all for your participation. There's plenty of work to be done. And thank you for your interest. And we'll see you all soon. And thanks again, John, for keeping us on track. That was a tough one.
Thanks,
Okay.
Jonathan, so much.
All right. Take care. Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.